Well, evening all. Well, this is Tom's Jackson Adrian Smith Super Strat thing, and pretty guitars they are too. Locking nut, string retainer bar, maple neck, flat radius, quite flat radius, Floyd Rose tremolo. This has got a changed out DiMarzio pickup. Then there's a phase switch somewhere and a coil tap somewhere, and 5-position switch. So yeah, I mean, you may have seen these before. Very white and black and pretty good looking. So story behind this one, well, I mean, first of all, this is the second guitar that Tom's brought my way. The first guitar came about 6 years ago when I was first started up, and Tom's a local guy who contacted me way back then, and we met in Tavistock, and he handed over the guitar and I went away and did my work. And in those days, I think I'm pretty certain I did it in the old-fashioned style, neck off, flat, standard fret leveling approach. But all those years have passed since then, and he loved playing his first one, and now he's got a second one, and he's got a spot in a cover band, a tribute band. So he definitely wants this one to play at its best. So he's just recently acquired it, and one of the things that he's found about it is that it has quite a lot of fret slap. Now, when you kind of come along and look up close, if I can do this without moving around too much. I don't know where we can see this best. I was looking at the frets while I was having a little play earlier on, and they've clearly been leveled at some point by somebody. There's flat spots on them. It's not that easy to see on this camera. Oh, that's a bit better. Yeah, you can see some flattening going on. I would suggest that's been leveled somewhere. I mean, so, you know, you never know, it could just be played flat. It's always a possibility. Anyway, and down this end they were looking a little bit flat from this angle here, a little bit flattened. You can sort of see, it gives you the indicator when you see the flat shadow underneath it. It's quite a good indicator. That's probably the third fret, it's probably the flattest looking one. So it could just be excessive play, but it's a good condition guitar. And what we've got, if I can find a way of reproducing it against the mirror, there's a sort of little bit of fret slap on a lot of these lower strings. So looking at everything else, I think that the tremolo is balanced perfectly well. Everything looks in good shape. The intonation looks fairly good. It should be. There's a little bit of a pullback on the G. May need a tiny adjustment. If we just might be worth just checking it on a couple of the strings first, just so we can get a sense of how much, if any, movement's required. Can be easier, well, it is easier to make the adjustments when they well, that doesn't feel right. Hold on a second. Bit of a push to get that in. Yeah, it can be much easier to make the adjustments with the strings off, which they will be at some point. So you can do some adjustments afterwards, but yeah, I would say the B sharp. Let's put this up. Sorry, you can't see this a minute. A little bit sharp. Okay, so the B is sharp. Let me just make a note of this. The B is sharp. I can see it here. B is sharp. We've got the just a quick look at these two. Oh, get out of the way. Yeah, the A is sharp. A is sharp. And probably could be the E as well, slightly. The E is pretty much on. Okay, so I've got a good view of a couple of small adjustments to make there, which I can see how that'll be easy to do with the strings off, so without too much worry. Right, so I had a little play of this and everything, and it's all playing well. So really, there's two main things on this guitar. First is the fact that these low frets have been hit pretty hard in terms of fret leveling, particularly the third fret, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. There's been a couple of these down here have been hit hard. The other, so we've got the fret slap, I call it, which is different from fret buzz, and I can sort of explain that in a minute. But down here, if I get the camera position sort of halfway, you might sort of see about halfway across, you see there's more space down here than there is over there, and we've got a bit of string slippage off the end there. So I think we're going to need to try and get a little adjustment made on the alignment. Now I've had a little go while Tom was here, and actually it wasn't very forthcoming with the movement in the pocket, so we may have to do a very small amount of sanding to create a little bit of sideways move for the neck, because this is, if possible anyway, this is a little bit close to slipping off the neck, which is not ideal. So what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to find me a I think I'm going to find me a pen, marker pen. Yep, and we're going to mark up the frets. Now these are already locked in place, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to access them all, so it'll be a bit of a fiddle to get them. So I'm going to just push the strings and get as much done as I can. Yeah, as I push the strings back, I can see how flat these are. Like I say, it could be, it's not unusual to find somebody who's owned it before has leveled the frets, highly likely. But what they've done is they may have leveled them, but they haven't re-crowned them, which is something you'd sort of want to do really. And they also haven't cured the fret slap. Now, a few people have asked me recently about this expression, fret slap, and I kind of use it as if it's a technical term, which of course it isn't, except the fact that it is, but the difference is I've invented it for my own use. And the reason I've invented it for my own use isn't to grab some historic fame and glory or anything like that. It's simply because when you discern a distinction between two kinds of buzz, I suppose you could call it, then for the purpose of fixing said two types of buzz, it makes sense to name them in a way that distinguishes between them. So for that reason, and just for convenience, fret buzz is that buzz that a lot of us will be familiar with, that you find in a particular place on the neck where your strings encounter a high or a low fret. So you know, when you get that, it'll often, you'll play down here and it's not that sound we're hearing right now. You'll often find you'll hear it as a choked out note, or at worst it will play two notes one after another, the same, two frets will play the same note. That's typically fret buzz, and it's caused by either a one high note in a particular place, or quite often a low note, a low fret, sorry, a high fret or a low fret. And the solution to fret buzz, the effect of fret buzz is exactly the same, whether it's a high or a low fret. It's a choking out of the next so choking out when you play it. The string's choking out on the next fret, and that's because that next fret is either physically higher than everything else, or the one you're fretting on is lower than everything else, and so the next ordinary fret appears high. So that's why the effect is the same. That's fret buzz, and it's distinctly found in one or two places across the whole. You won't find it. Maybe you'll find it one or two places on a couple of strings, but it's specific. It's located in a particular fret. There's another kind of sound called, which I distinguish by calling it fret slap, not fret buzz. A fret slap is when a string hasn't got enough room to move, and what characterizes fret slap is that little zzz sounds the same. It accompanies loads of fretted notes in great chunks. Sometimes the whole of the neck it will sound like that, and it will have the same little rattly sound following it. And the difference between fret slap, that sound, first of all, is you can detect it because it's on most of the frets on that string, or sometimes a big patch halfway, or a third, and then nothing for a bit, and then another third. So its key characteristic is that it's on most of the frets rather than just one or two, and it's the same sound wherever you play, and it just tracks all of the notes on that string on the frets going up the neck on that string, and it's usually more pronounced on the lower strings. Okay, so it's on all of those. Fret slap is not caused by a single uneven fret. It's caused by, it's a sign that the string moving doesn't have enough space to spin, and as a result the string in its movement is slapping into the frets, or clipping the frets you might call it. Now the thing I've noticed about fret slap is that it's often caused because rather than having a single fret high, it's caused by the curvature or undulations in the neck, which then push a number of frets together up, and then sink a number of frets, and then push a number of frets up again somewhere else. So yes, they are higher and lower frets, but they're more like clusters of them, and so you find that cluster gets in the way of all the notes. So the next hillock, or the next little hill, gets in the way of the notes and causes this buzz, or this slap noise. Zzz, 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 zzz. Now the reason I distinguish them one from another is that I've found over time, and I can't really explain this particularly scientifically, but I have found over time that when I consider the leveling process in two parts, it seems to work things out really well. So where I have got uneven frets and I have fret buzz, and that's often a single choked out note there, or two notes the same note on two different frets there, caused by a single high fret, or a high fret that causes a bend to choke out on the high E up here somewhere. Those things I use this sort of truss rod here to level them out, and I'm thinking about bringing that high fret down to the level of all the other ones, or in the case of a single low fret, I'm thinking about gently leveling the frets either side of it down to bottom out the low fret. That's what you have to do. Okay, but once you've done that and you've got all the notes playing cleanly, you can still be left with this zzz, 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 fret slap. And what I found is, and this is the bit that's not scientific, but I want you to kind of think about. So if I draw the high fret business, or the single high fret, so let's say, forget the curvature for a minute, so there's your fretboard, right, and your high fret is caused by one fret, for example, sitting above the other one, and let's put in over here, let's put in a low fret. Okay, so can you see it? Yeah, there's our things. So the fret leveling to get rid of fret buzz, its aim is to come along and cut off the top bit of that fret, and here you'll see the one at the end is still underneath, and that means it will, if we play a note there, then it means this next ordinary fret will appear to be high and it will choke out, which we don't want. So with the case of the low fret, we can, yes, get rid of the high fret by chopping its little top off there, but with a low fret we have to gently bring everything down a little tiny bit down to the level of the low fret, like that. Okay, and that then becomes playable again. So that's fret buzz, but fret slap is an interesting thing. So when your neck is under load, you think it's a curve, but actually it's sort of like this. Right? But what we've done is we've taken the truss rod and we've used 3 sample points here, let's say here and here, and we put, in this case we put those little brass things on, didn't we? And then we bend the truss rod into a nice, forget the right hand one, didn't quite meet, but we bend the truss rod like that. So then once we've done that, we've, if you like, we've what do I call it, calibrated our truss rod to approximate the curve of the neck. But you can see that the two things are different. The top one is smooth and the bottom one is slightly bumpy. And what you get on this thing is, if you carry on just play, if this was your string and you just carried on playing, what you've got is you've got frets going up a hill, down a hill a bit, up a hill, down in a ditch, down a little ditch, up again, and so on and so forth, right? So you've got this strangely bumpy thing which altogether doesn't allow the strings to spin, because this is very badly drawn, but let's say we play and a lot of strings might just slap against those frets there or those frets there, okay? And that's what causes the fret slap. Now what I've found is, the beauty of this method of fret leveling is, having done the operation to get rid of the fret buzz, so I'm, like I say, I'm kind of deliberately doing that, thinking about lowering any high frets, and so I'm going through it, making all the fretted notes play cleanly, making sure all the bent notes play, and that's got rid of any single uneven low or high frets. Then I switch to this truss rod, which is the stiffer, thicker U-channel truss rod from StewMac, and this is what I found over the years, that truss rod, if we think of it here as this purple thing, when I lower that onto the uneven thing, what you'll see it does is it kind of, I use the word imposes, it's very badly drawn because it's gone all wobbly here, but what we do is we impose the smooth ideal curve of the truss rod onto the bumpier, less than ideal curve of the neck, and somehow that takes care of those little clusters that we didn't spot here in the fret buzz area, but it takes care of these little, because they tend, the fret buzz thing tends to be one next to the other thing. It's comparative. 2 frets in a row is usually what causes fret buzz. This is more, I suppose you could say this is more than, this is clusters of frets. So here the general bumpiness throws up a cluster of frets here and a cluster of frets here, which get in the way of the spinning string. But doing this thing of gently imposing the precise or smooth curve of that truss rod onto the real bumpy curve in real life, I found clears just enough room to alleviate and sometimes get rid of the fret slap altogether. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing here, having painted those black. So you will see, if I just get me positioned, and it's not the best view ever, I haven't really worked out how to make this better than, apart from having a camera person, which I don't have. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to, first of all, we check the action, because I think this is, we agreed this is set up where Tom wants it, and I have to say, looking at this, I don't think you could get a lower action out of this guitar. It's probably, it's going to be on the 1.5 there. It's a fraction above, and it's barely above on the other side, so there's hardly any change we can make out of this. So I'm not really concerned about the playing action. We might try and take it down a tiny fraction later on, once the strings are off, but for now I'm concerned only about alleviating the fret slap. And to do that, I'm going to use I'm going to calibrate the stiff. Oh, that's the other thing, right? There was another dynamic about this. One of the things that we noticed with this, which was a pain, is of course this has the truss rod adjustment down here, and the problem that we've got is it's pretty much dead flat. Now, what we're going to do is, I think this needs a little bit more relief, but I'm not going to do it at this point in time because it means taking all the strings off, taking the neck off, making a random adjustment, hoping it's enough, putting the strings back on, loading it all up, balancing the tremolo, and so on and so on. Right this second, I don't really need it I don't need the relief in it. Well, I do in a way because this is very flat and this doesn't like totally flat. It's got a bit of curve. Let's see first of all if this will work. If I can't get this to calibrate because this particular truss rod is starts out a tiny bit curved, which I know it does, it may be that it won't accept or it won't calibrate onto this totally dead flat neck. If that's the case, then as it's just on with no tightness at all, that is on the mark, we can do it. So it's almost perfectly flat. So this is, yeah, so we can do it. And what we're doing is we're kind of taking down a relative levelness. This is under longitudinal compression, and so that any humps and bumps that come along the way, even if it's not curved, it'll still be lumpy and bumpy because of the compression. I've got to say that bumpiness of the neck when it's under load is, I think, mostly due to longitudinal compression. It's pulling that way, squeezing the neck. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the good old fret leveling file. Now this is a little bit tricky because we can do one of two things. We can either, now we don't need the micro tuners, we could slack off the locking nuts at this point and remove them so that we have access to the strings, okay, because we're not doing anything with the micro tuners. We're not needing the strings to stay dead in tune. So we'll remove these, put them on one side, and that means then I can lift this out the way to give us room to work. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to begin by using our calibrated truss rod, and I'm going to lay it just kind of under gravity really onto the frets like this, and I'm going to allow this thing to work up and down a little bit under gravity more than anything else. So at the moment, if we get a close look, you can see straight away this tool, I put some fresh sticky sandpaper on it, but you can see straight away that it's telling us there's high fret right there. As we knew, we could see that had been massively hit from the beginning. That's sticking up. Then there's a chunk here that aren't, they're in a dip. Then there's a chunk here that is high up, or in the way of the cutter, and then there's a couple at the end that are low again. So we've got high, low, high shape on this neck, and we can see it already. And that's what it's doing. That's not because the frets have been accidentally hammered in high or low. That's the resultant curvature in this neck. Now, what I'm seeing is, it's if I'm going to press at all when doing this, I'm going to press right in the middle. That's all I want to have happen. I want this curve of this truss rod to move nicely onto the into the frets, and it's showing me that there are definitely these two high areas here, and that's because it's a not warped, it's a undulating shape. Now the thing about doing this under strung conditions is you may not find this same pattern of highs and lows with the neck relaxed and unstrung. So that's what we're seeing, is that these are sticking out, this is low. Now if we dialed in some more curvature into the truss rod, it wouldn't make any improvement because it would try and push more into the curve in the center here, but it's not in the center that we're missing it, it's off to one side here. So it's telling me that it's not that we haven't got enough curvature, it's just that overall this this whole set of frets isn't a smooth curve. If it was flat, it wouldn't be flat. It would still have a high spot here, a low spot here, a high spot here, and a low spot here. If it's curved, it would still have those. We're working on it pretty flat at the moment, but it's telling us that this neck has those ups and down bumps. And to be fair, whoever's tried to level this in the past has clearly encountered that dynamic, because their leveling has worked on the same areas that I'm working on and can't hardly get to these here. Now I've kept going and I've just about touched these here, so I would take that as being enough for this track. Yeah, confidence in this thing, you have to be confident in when you see this much material. It's not this much material. When you see the material cutting up like this, it can be quite nerve-wracking. We knew that somebody had leveled these quite hard before, but you can see that it's still not down at the level where it's reaching down to these. So to get the thing to play properly, we're still going to have to take a little bit more on top. So I then gently hoik this dust downwards. Once I've re-crowned this, it's going to look a lot better than it did before. That sounds good. That's fine. So that's the first one done. I'm going to use the same calibration to do the second one. I'm going to pull the string sideways. You may break the strings at this point because it's a little bit harder to use this technique with a locking nut at the end there. But as long as I can make the space. So now we're going to move on to the B track. Again, using the same thing really. Mostly using the gravity. Because we don't have a lot of fret slap on the high strings, we're not going to hear the improvement much at this point in time. What I'm doing is I'm just following along from the E string, or the E track if you like. I'm just making sure that we continue, and this is bottomed this one out now. That's good. So I'm pretty confident that will be all right too. It's when we get across into the other ones that we're going to have, the lower strings, we're going to have to listen out for this improvement that we need. But here at this stage in the game, we want to make sure every note plays. Okay, notes are good. Now we can recalibrate for the G track. So this is the amazing thing, that the 6 years of using this method. Now this now needs a tiny little bit more of a turn on the adjuster, because we're now getting just a little bit more curvature at this point in the neck radius, and that's not uncommon too, that as you go across the neck you find a slight change in the shape of the neck. I think that's nearly there. The adjustments, by the way, are minuscule, as I always point out. That feels right. Okay, so before I do things with this, let's listen to the G. A little tiny bit fizzle. 9 and 10, right? Let's listen to 9 and 10, because that's a bit fizzly there. 9 and 10. I'm just going to write it down so I remember. So the aim is to hear that improving. That's the target. Oh, hang on. Oh, yeah, we're doing the G. Yes, thank you. Yeah, the aim is to hear an audible improvement. Now, this is a little bit difficult to get this to move. Can I lift this out of the way without it snapping? Your guess is as good as mine. I just about can. I wouldn't be surprised if it breaks at this point. Now we're on the G track. Again, gravity only. What I've found out in all these years is that if you want to map or impose this smooth curve onto this strangely uneven compressed fingerboard, then the less force you put on it in many ways the better, and the less you press down at one end or the other the better. So what I'm trying to do here is just to work with the curve that we've got, and if anything I'm just holding it down in the middle, and what we're getting is an interesting thing here. So we had 9 and 10 was buzzing, and we've got a really high, we've got low frets on 9 and 10, and we've got a high spot on 11. There you go, and 12. So that's what was causing that fizzle down there. It may still be, we may not have got it out of the way there. And you can see, relatively speaking, I hope you can see, I'm going to do, oh crikes, sorry, this is a bit of a crap bit of back to front cam work, but yeah, look at this. So you see that there, let's go to the right side. Okay, so we've got low, see how there's the G track where my finger is, where the dot is pretty much. Low, it's not even touching those two, they're in a ditch. But when you fret in there, 9 and 10, sorry 9 and 10 as I did just now, remember it fizzled? It fizzled because look at this, the next two are high, right? And this is the great thing about this method. This truss rod is telling me everything I need to know. It's confirming what I suspect, and then telling me what else I need to know. This is why I love this method. It's so cool. So what I'm not sure at this stage is whether that's solved that. So I'm just going to get rid of this dust for a minute, and I'm going to do a tiny bit more. And the reason I'm going to do a tiny bit more is because I can see how low those two frets are, and if I don't help to gently bottom them out a little bit, we won't get an improvement. So I'm just again trying to use the curvature of the rod under very low sort of pressure, just gravity mostly, maybe a little bit of a tiny push in the middle here, and yeah, these are amazingly low. So that sometimes I think if you didn't know this method the way I know it, you might think that those two low frets there, you may think that there's a reason, or you'd wonder what the reason was that they're low. You might assume they were perhaps hammered in too far or something. But I used to think that, but actually what I've realised is they're low because they're in a ditch. Well, that's pretty much cured that. 9 and 10. Yeah. Much better. But they're still in that ditch, but they're better. So I don't go any further than that. That's enough. So you can see that's the system at work, and that's what I love about this method. Is I can tell you in advance, as I find things, I can tell you that I suspect that it's a low patch there and a high patch over there, and so on and so forth. And then as soon as it starts to cut the fret tops, I can confirm that I was right about guessing the shape or the topography of the neck. And then as soon as I know I'm right about the topography of the neck, then I know what I'm aiming to do. In the case of this, that's two strings, moved that across. So now we're on to, I should have done a test play, but we know this was a bit fret buzzy too, or fret slappy. So here we go again, just using the stiff U-channel truss rod with the purpose of imposing that gentle curve onto this to open up a little bit more space. And the reality is that, as you can see, somebody's already done some leveling before, and it's costing us a little bit more material to free up those fret slappy areas, but that's the price we've got to pay, because otherwise this guitar will play, but you will be confined permanently to a higher action, and that's clearly not what Tom wants, and certainly not what he brought it here for. So now we want to listen out for the slapness. Much better versus that. So just hear this. It's pity you can't just grab these. I suppose I could edit them together, but we're going for the A. So fret 7 is a good one on the A, as a good marker. Okay, so we're going to do calibrate now on the A, and we're going to move on to that. So this is, like I said, this is an aspect of this technique which it took me several years to figure it out, and now I need to flatten this a little bit more now. So coming back onto this side, the curvature is reduced a tiny little bit. Yeah, so it took me 5 or 6 years to figure this out, and it's not exactly scientific. I can't prove to you what's happening. All I can do is say, well, logically, I think this is, whoops, that's come out. I can say logically, I think this is what's happening. I need to just take this out for a minute because it's going to come flying out otherwise. Right, it's not very far in there. Yeah. Yes, so not scientific, but you can hear it reduces the slap. So here we go, the A string. Now, what we sort of expect to see is probably either a high fret on around here, which we kind of know there is. This 8th fret is high anyway, or a low fret, which we started off with on that side on the 5 and 6. Okay, well that's interesting. So we've got a low one here on 7. So what do we say? A7. Yeah, that's right. So a low one on 7 makes the next one high. There you go. That's why A7's buzzing. Sorry, slapping. So there you go. Just the logic of it. Now, I suppose the question would be is, let's play this first. So we're listening out for fret slap. A little bit down in the first half. So I'm going to recalibrate this, and then I'm going to lay the thing on it really lightly this time. Okay, that's calibrated. Yeah, it's hard to tell whether somebody who did leveling before did a good job or not. I guess what you could say is that they perhaps didn't carry on. They didn't carry on to where it needed to be, and if they did level, then they also didn't re-crown, which kind of leaves things looking worse than they need to look. A little bit more kind of worrying to the next tech or player who comes along and wants to know why it looks that way. Okay. Oh yeah. I would say all of that original slap has gone. There's a tiny little... No. You can get the tiniest little bit out of it, but not much. So I'm happy with that. So the next part, once I've done this low E... Oh, before we do it, let's hear the low E. So there's a... Bzz, bzz. Every note up to there has got that at the end, and then it changes. No, it's the same. It changes to a different sound up there. That's not too bad about there. So first 2/3 of it are fret slapping. So we calibrate again on the low E. Again, this is fresh 400 grit on here. So I've made some put some new stuff on, especially for this occasion. Okay, that's a bit too flat now, so we'll add a little curve back in. The smallest of curves. And that's about on the ball. Why do I put the... Oh, there it is. Okay, low E, here we go. So remember, the first half of this string was creating the same kind of fret slap, and then it changed around about the 10th, the 12th fret, something like that. And it became something a little bit different, but not as bad. So I think most of the work is needed is on this half. And there's a showing. Oh, it's showing it. There's two. You can sort of see there's two patches here. Then there's a low spot. Then there's a low spot at the end, which is where it evened out. So it's amazing how it kind of tells you. But of course you have to remember that the whole point about this method, as you can tell, is that it's doing the leveling with the neck under compression. Almost. I'm going to recalibrate and do a little bit more. That's nearly there. You can hear it's gone from its original fret slap, and now it's, I think I'm just going to go for some all over, carefully calibrated. That's pretty good still. There's some aspects of this, of how do you know when to stop, how do you know when to put a little bit more pressure down in certain areas, how do you know, different things like that. They really do come with experience, and they are a little bit magical. So for example, there are times when I'm doing this and you'll see that I will do something like pick this up and turn it round, right? And I have no idea really why I'm doing that. And I guess a logical brain could say, well, if there's any bias in one side of the curve or other, then I'm sort of sharing it with both sides. That looks even now, look at that. So I have a feeling we're pretty much there. Yeah, so, there are little bits like that I sort of just sense that they work, but I don't really know why. Now, the point I was going to make a bit earlier on before I got sidetracked myself. Okay, now all we're looking at here, I have a slight feeling that this first fret action might be a whiff too low, which might be calling... No, maybe not. Yeah, what was I going to say? Forgotten. Right, we're sort of almost there, but there's a little hint, and I'm not entirely sure that that's going to be solved by leveling further. I wonder, I might do a tiny bit more, but I'm cautious about that. I'll do one little bit more and then we'll stop, and we may improve with a little bit more relief in the neck. But so I'm just going to treat this as a nice curve now. Yeah, this is the only method I know of that you can hear the improvement and you know when to stop and when to carry on. It's quite interesting in that way. It's unique in that way, I think, really. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's as much as I want to do. I get rid of all the grime. Let's check the playing action again. I think it may have changed slightly because I've taken the I've reduced the pressure a little bit with taking that bar off. So now we're down at quite a tiny low action. It's about 1 millimeter, which is a fraction under. I'm going to call it quits on there because I think that's as much as we're going to comfortably get to do. And now we're going to undo the strings, remove them. Now once I've taken these off, we're going to chuck them away. I want to clean up the fingerboard. Remember, we're going to do a couple of things quite a few things while the strings are off. We're going to tweak the position of the saddles a little bit for better intonation. We're going to clean up this fretboard to make sure that we got a lot of this marker pen off it. And I'm going to have a look at the movement in the pocket to see if we can better align the neck the strings down the neck, because they're off at the moment. So we need our little I've forgotten where my little bits of wood have gone. Where did I put them? Oh, they're up here. It's a different place. Thank you. Right, let's undo these. One. Thing with these is I find that it's good practice to, once you've taken the string out, do them up so that the little steel block can't fall out and run away, because it's all too easy for that to happen. Right, those strings are off and in the bin. Hang on, I'm about to throw away a bag, and it's got a tone knob in it, a strap tone knob. I'm going to do that. Go over there. Right, so let's get some cloth, and we'll just wipe this way. Now the thing is, if I put a load practice memory, right? I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take the neck off, because we need to make adjustments to it and we need to get access to it. So you're going to come off, my dear friend, and we're going to look at the pocket and assess whether there's any movement space available to us. Very tight, which is in some ways a good thing, but it's a little bit misaligned, which isn't such a good thing. Good. Right. So, first thing we want to do is we need a little bit more relief in the neck than it's got. We use a 4mm one, and that will require a tiny adjustment in that direction, which I will leave as much as I'm going to do. Right, the neck pocket here, what I'll be looking to do is sand a little, give it some more room, a tiny bit more room. Now this, I think what I'll do is, I'll put this off to one side, marker pen, it's going to be here, isn't it? Here it is. So I'll do the masking tape bit here, and then I'll crown the frets. So this will pick up some of the dust as well. What I can do here, I think that first fret action is incredibly low, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and have a look and see what's under there. If there are any shims or no shims, I think it might benefit from a few little layers of micro thin tape just to give it the tiniest lift up, and then it's out of the way for polishing out the frets too, which isn't a bad thing. I think that is just a fraction too low on the first fret. It's all very well having a low first fret action, but if it's a bit too low, then it's not so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tape on. I'm going to then crown the frets. This may take a little longer than normal because these were quite flattened to begin with. I have a sneeze coming. The thing about frets is you can only see what you can see when you're buying frets. It's not at all easy to ascertain. I mean, you know, if it's a good piece of advice to, you know, when you're buying it, is to trouble the seller to you know, show you as much close-up detail as possible. I mean, most people have got good quality cameras these days, and there's no reason why they can't get you a close-up of the quality that you saw earlier on in this video, you know, in good lighting and so on. You don't have to have, you know, fluorescent LEDs or whatever those things are, but you know, you can get a good picture, and you should be able to see the frets in as much detail as is required to assess whether they will have any problems or not. And so I think, you know, always a piece of advice is to ask for a bit of extra. Most people, if they want a sale, they'll do it, and if they're not showing it to you because the frets are worn, then, you know, then it is, you kind of be better off walking away probably. So I'm just getting down to a bit where I need to get some smaller bits cut. We run out of pre-ready-made stuff, and we have to cut a bit, just thinner strips. Once I've done the recrowning on here, what I'll do is I'll go off camera, put the radio on, cup of tea or something, and do the polishing out, and then clean up everything, including a clean over on the guitar. And the difficult thing about these, with respect to the neck relief, is the fact that they put the truss rod adjuster down inside the body, and you have to take the neck off to adjust it, which is silly because you need to be able to see what impact the adjustment has, really. And you have to take the neck off, approximate, guess it, and put the strings back on, put the neck back on, load it with strings, and then find out it isn't relieved enough. And then what do you do? Well, you go back to the beginning, and you have to do it again, which is, you know, as you can imagine, when you have to do it a few times, it's not, you know, not best pleased. So there isn't any really good reason for having a truss rod in that position, adjuster in that position. I honestly don't know why they did it. Maybe somebody in the kind of history of the manufacture of these types of guitars would have an answer for that, but I certainly don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. There might have been something to do with how easy or difficult it is to install. Could be anything, I don't know, but it doesn't work for me. It's just a pain. So I'm just going to cut these strips. I'm going to cut into 4 to get in to the smallest of small frets. I'll put this on the chair out of the way. Yeah, so if I don't, if the adjustment on the neck turns out to be too much, then we have to take the strings off again, or slack them off and lock them in place with a, well, I suppose, yeah, you slack them off, lock them with the locking nuts, take the neck off with the strings attached still, do the alteration again, put it all under pressure again before finally deciding to kind of lock it off or stretch it all out and lock it off and set the fine tuners in their final position. So it's all an absolute pain for anyone to do, and they should never have done it that way. They shouldn't have, honestly. Anyway, probably, if I remember, I don't remember exactly, but I bet the Adrian Smith didn't get a very clean score on the fret condition first time round 6 years ago. I could probably go through my my old fret board of shame, fret level leadership board of shame, and find a reference to it, because I used to keep photographs of those somewhere. Photographs. Daguerreotypes. Anyway. Yeah. I remember how surprised I was that some of the expensive guitars had just as many uneven frets. But then that was done with the necks off and the necks not under any load, strings off and necks relaxed. So who knows? Okay, so this is a load of thin strips for finishing off the frets on here. Sorry, thump. Right, so tomorrow night, I was going to do this tomorrow night, but the 250k pots for the West Tone didn't arrive that I bought, so that's put the West Tone on to earliest tomorrow, in which case I thought, right, I'll do this tonight, and along with the final coats of spray for the West Tone, which now needs to sit for a few days before I put any tuners on it. Well, certainly it does if I want to put tuners on without them sort of sinking into the finish a bit. So I thought, okay, I'll do the Adrian Smith tonight, and hopefully do the West Tone body and rewiring tomorrow. The body's been what's the word? Buffed, so it's as shiny as it's going to be. It's an old vintage thing, so it's road worn as well. But I've given it a clean up, and the only thing I could do extra to it is to shield it while I'm at it. And somebody asked me the other day whether I'd given up, because I did what was it? I did the K, Joe's K with aluminium foil, and somebody was asking had I given up using the black conductive shielding paint, and the answer is no. I use that particularly where it's a very simple, straightforward job. The downside of the conductive paint, I found, is that it can be a very messy business, and it can stay messy for a long time, so that by the time you come to fit your components and put the guitar, reassemble the guitar and do all the sort of setup stuff, you can actually find that your hands and the guitar are suddenly dirty again, very dirty, which isn't such a great thing. Right, now I'm into the remarking the frets for the crowning, And this is going to be, I think, a bit of hard work. Take longer than a usual one because there's quite a bit of levelling out that's been done here. So when we put it back together, we want to have a little bit more relief in the neck. We want the frets levelled and re-crowned, which they weren't before, so they a better fret, more fret-like shape. And then we also want to find that we've got the neck with a little bit more wiggle room in the pocket. Okay. So one of the things about doing this, it's quite a thing that comes down to experience as well, is that when you're working on a guitar that's had frets levelled fairly hard before, it can be quite shocking. You can think that you've done a lot of it when in fact a lot of it's been flattened before you got there. So you have to have the confidence to know what's historic and how much you've taken, be able to read the dust and know what you're doing and what somebody else did. So this is I'm using the jumbo fret, the jumbo scale side of this crowning file. And the idea, always with the crowning file, is to leave a thin strip of marker pen across the top of the fret, so that it's more or less arch-shaped compared to where it just was, which was flattened at the top. So and the very low ones have much less to do, and then they kind of move on much quicker. Always kick some dust up onto the top there, which needs vacuuming off afterwards. There's some wear. I can see some wear grooves on here as well, which aren't completely removed, even though we've done quite a bit of work. That's one of those things I don't like to chase out wear grooves just for the sake of how they look, not at the cost of fret metal. So I'd only do that if it was very specifically requested, or that the grooves were causing playability problems, which they very rarely do. They have to be very bad before they are at that stage. So those little marks down there, I will leave them and clean most of them up with the sanding polishing process. Okay. So on this one, I'm not sure. We've got to raise the action a tiny bit too. So I'm not 100% convinced that we'll get every single little bit of slap out of this, and that's never a guarantee that I can. But it's most of the time we can significantly improve it. There's quite a lot of flat spot there. Let's see what I'm working on. So some of them, when you know that there's interesting uneven fret work when some of them are quite low, and then either side there's a set of pretty much level ones. I'm going to come back to these. I'm just sort of getting a sense of what's what. So we've got a particularly low one here, sorry, high one, that needs quite a lot of crowning work. and the rest, by comparison, not so much. Oh. One of those moments. Okay. Whiz through really on those. Alright, just about there. Right, so what I'll do now is to get some cleaning solvent stuff, get the right cloth, and then, wow, there's a nice sunset out there. Boy, is that nice. This thing, this could be a sign of a pretty pretty day tomorrow. Look at that. How pretty is that? Feel the cold air coming in too. Dum 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 dum. You are now residing on top of the kettle, and I'm miles away. Oh, I've lost me cleaning stuff. So I'll give you a different view for once in a while. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean off the marker pen off these here frets, and then I'll be in a position to polish them, sand them and polish them. Most of the pen removed on both sides, which gives a pretty mucky cloth. Right, wasn't that a nice sunset, eh? Wasn't it? I was sitting, when I got home from the workshop yesterday, I was sitting on the sofa with my laptop uploading the pictures as usual, progress pictures to put on the Facebook page, and the door was a little bit open, and they were coming to the end of the summer where the door gets left open less, unfortunately, and I kind of heard this little scratching noise, and I looked up, and our friend, the occasional visitor, the hedgehog, had just kind of climbed up into our front room. It came in the house. So I looked around, thought, I'm not supposed to be here, and went out. But the good thing is that since he had told me he was there, I was able to zip into the kitchen and get him some cat food, and so I put it down. I couldn't see him, and he wasn't coming to the call or anything. So I put it down, and then a couple of minutes later, I don't know where he came out from, but I could hear this chomping noise, which is, he's a very noisy eater. Well, they are. We've got two that come around, but he's a very noisy eater, and yeah, he polished it all off. And I didn't see him again, but he definitely appreciated it. So that's another of the nice aspects of living in the countryside, having resident wildlife friends. Okay, so my various grades of paper getting lined up for the exciting polish, sand and polish out. Some spare bits for the next time. stashed out of the way, get the set of micro mesh papers, except I can never find the actual ones. Is that 8,000? 8,012. Oh man, that's two 12s. 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 12,000. Those there, those there. Those are bits of paper. There's a set there too. Okay. That was fun, wasn't it? This is the refretted and refinished West Tone neck. Look at that baby. Like new. Got a final sanding on the back sides and edges, and then it will be through the buffer and back on the body. Right, see you afterwards. Okay, while I'm at it, and we're back, frets leveled, blah 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 blah. We're going to take the B back slightly if we can get the right hex key. Come along, B, you go there. Da, 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 and then the A back as well. That's about right. I think the E's got to go back as well too. That's definitely not in the right place. There we are. Sometimes that's too far forward. Let's get these things where they belong. We're going to do this. Let's have them properly spaced. Forward, right. It's either that or it isn't anything. That's the way it works, I'm afraid. Okay, now we need the other one for the backhand. Right, okay, so I've done four things. Changed that, put some, taken a little bit of sanding on the inside of there, hopefully to give us a little bit more room. I've also, you can't see it, of course, because it's very carefully done. I've also put some tape under there, some silver tape under there, aluminium tape, so I've lifted that slightly, which means I'm also going to put these back in, do them up a little bit more, sorry about that, get them into a solidly fixed level. Wow. Yeah, I managed to leave the Sony camera on the whole time while I was it's the wrong size. Let's get the right size. Bear with me. To there. Right, good. Okay, so yeah, some foil under there, lifting that up. Everything else now ready to basically re-string. So we're going to use 10s, and I know that Tom needs a spare set of 10s as well, so we'll get 2 out of the department of 10s. So the issue now, what we're looking for is how much is the, or what effect is the, adjustment I made on the truss rod going to have, and then also are we going to get the right alignment for the neck? We don't know the answer to any of those things. Now I'm going to cut the ends off. Some people like to put the ball ends onto the headstock, but I'm sure that's not something Tom does, so these two are coming off, and we we attach our strings and clamp them there. It's a very brute force way of doing this. I don't like it at all. I'm not in the slightest bit impressed with the technology. Just, you know, holding something by crushing it, it seems like a failure of engineering intelligence to me. It's kind of insulting my problem-solving brain. I suppose it, you know, it works. It's been used for a while, but like I say, it bugs me because I have to. It relies on me crushing it really tightly. So I'm depending on the threads on these tightening bolts, which, you know, God knows what's happening down there. So who knows? But like I said, it's not elegant, and I've seen a few tremolos that solve that problem in a definitely elegant fashion by comparison, and I really like those little cradles for the ball end and things like that. Why not? You know, the cradle, the ball end was designed to take the weight of the string loading. You know, so why not let it do its job instead of creating an extra engineering nightmare. Right, so now we come to this end, and we're going to get these into place. So the thing about getting the strings back on this kind of guitar is, if you've got everything where all things being equal, if you had it kind of balanced and set up before, then you should be okay just to basically restring and go, because you should go back to your original kind of playing position. That's the idea. So I'm going to put that through there and this under here, and that's, you see, this thing with these here locking nut things with a string puller, shouldn't really need a string puller once it's through the locking thing. It's a bit sort of a bit silly, really. So this doesn't really, I'm not doing what I want it to do. Pull back 1 fret's worth. Don't like that sound. Let's try and over the top. Let's do it as if it's a normal string under the loose string. Right, and now I've got to get this back under there, up onto the locking department, and then we'll just go there. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick look. I'm going to take the thing off in a minute. You'll see, it may be, I've guessed about five little sheets of thin, micro thin aluminium tape, so it could be that's too high, in which case we'll have to take some off. And now we're trying to get the strings through here under the thing. A bit fiddly, I have to say. Back a whole fret. I can't really do it the same way. Hold that there over. It comes round, pull that one up, push that one under, if we can get the room to do it. Okay, now we can take off the supporting block, and that comes flat down on the deck. That looks okay, it looks okay. Twist that a little bit so it doesn't scrape as it goes under. Through there. Back one. Yeah, so yeah, all things being equal, it should go back into the same equilibrium, unless you change the gauge of the strings, something like that, or you change the position or the loading of the springs in the cavities at the back, none of which we've done. So, but the key thing about this stage, when you restring a Floyd Rose type tremolo, with any tremolo really, is you've got to put the time in to stretch it out. Stretch the strings out before you try and do anything with it, because you need the strings to be stretched out, and otherwise you'll end up constantly having to release the locking nuts, retune, or retune with the locking nuts off and then locking them down again and going for it again, because you'll constantly be running out of space on the micro tuners. So just sticking with it long enough to stretch all of that slack out is an important part of this process, or discipline in this process. Go over the loose string on the first time and under on the second time. Yank the loose string up as it comes round. That should be good. And the final one. Now what I'm just going to do is I'm going to very carefully check the playing action, make sure all is good. Spacing looks a little bit better this time with the, I may have got a 0.5 millimeter correction out of it, which I'm pleased about. Under there, over there, under there. Right, so let us get all the excess gone. Keeps it nice and tidy. Right, and there's a load of little shiny string balls to take away as well. Good. Okay. So let's have a look. Locking that on. Actually, that is actually a little bit too high, so I'm going to take this off and reconsider. So it's okay. Let's see what we can peel off a couple of layers. Hard to know what the difference is, so I'm just going to take these off. Thank you. So there's always a way you do a tiny little bit and then you go, maybe I should stop there. Now what I have got, actually, if that's too much, I've got some copper up here somewhere. I had some copper. Oh no. Oh yeah, copper. I might just use a little bit of that instead. Let's just see if we can measure what that was, because now it appears to be too thick. See if I can get a reading on it. It's not a lot, but I'm sorry you can't see it at the minute. Just bear with me. So give us a 0.25. Yeah, so maybe it is too much. 0.17. Let's go with a single sheet of this copper. So I'm basically removing the aluminium that I used because it's raised it too high. Going to use my bit of copper, something like this. You get these usually come with little shims for making adjustments for the nut, but this is a very fine adjustment, so I don't think there'd be anything really geared up to do this. Oh no, hang on, I was measuring the thickness of the paper and the metal, so I'm going to do 2 sheets of this, but no more. Two and no more. And if that's no good, I'll tear it all off and do one. Come back. I like doing it with tape because it's such a clean and simple way of doing it, and you can, if you want to, you can keep adding very thin layers and build it up, and it's very innocuous. So I'm going to put that under there, get it the right way around to begin with. Place the screws, one here, and one here. Do most of the work here. Finish the thing with this. Right, so that's that bit taken care of. Now let's get rid of these things out the way. Rubbish out the way. So it sticks to you when you don't want it to. Not that you ever want it to stick to you, of course. Right, let's do it up a little bit. And then we'll take this one. Okay, so now we're going to give it a little bit of a stretch everywhere and get this loaded up. Yeah, that's better. That doesn't like that, does it? I think I'm going to need to, I might need to put a little piece of cocktail stick in there. It's not happy. It's kind of pulling out without gripping enough. The screws aren't very long, and they don't want to go in very far to the right for it to be at the right place. So I think we need to boost this up a bit. And in fact, we might need something else. It's quite big. Now this is too big, but we can sand it down. Making a pointy thing from wood. That's not quite where we want it. What we'll do is we'll glue in this little plug and then work on top of it, but it's not the only way to make it stay where we want it would be to have slightly longer screws or tighten it down further. And it doesn't need to be crimped down like this. It's not really that functional. It's a bit of a silly device on these guitars. Okay, so that will do. Get me some glue. This might then have to pause for a little minute while we tap it in. Actually, no, we can probably work straight on top of the glue. It doesn't have to set. A little bit of glue. One of these. Support it. Wrong end. other way around. Now a little bit difficult to get in there and tweak it, scrape it, tweak it. First bit done. I mean, I suppose you could go for a longer screw. If you must. So the difficult bit is getting the tailoring this bit. Very difficult indeed. Indeed difficult. Stubs. What you really need is a very sharp curved gouge. I think we'll just have to kind of leave it as a little cluster there. I don't want to sand it, I don't want to do anything else to it. It's going to have a hole drilled in it anyway, obviously. It's going to go like so. Give me my pointing stick Hercule. There's the hole. Small drill bit. Very small drill bit. Yeah, that will do. Leave us with some biting room. Worst comes to the worst, we'd have to go for a longer screws for this, but you don't really want this to be pushing so hard on these things because they're not really that functional, this string retainer. Well, that's definitely held in place. Don't think that'll be going anywhere. Still sticking up a bit. Lifting up the tremolo. Okay, giving it some bite, that's good. Okay, let's have a quick look where everything's sitting. Good, good, good. Really good, good. What we don't know yet is what the neck relief is like. A little bit. We'll go with that. Okay, where are we with the mirror? Okay, so now we're going to want to tune it up with a tuner. Actually, we really want to stretch the string, so let's make that the next step on the thing. So we get hold of the strings and we pull and stretch. Just for the sake of keeping this thing all in tune, making the whole business of, blimey, didn't like that. Where did that go? Has that dropped down on the, no, it's on the, weird. Maybe it had risen up. It's now in place. It's like I think the knife edge thing had ridden up a little, so it's now popped back into place. So what we're doing is, if you take the time now to stretch out these strings, then it'll make the business of getting the thing into final tuning much simpler, because it will not go out of tune so much. So I will need to plug it into the tuner. When you're doing a Floyd Rose, you can't obviously depend on you can't do relative harmonic tunings or anything like that. You have to work with the actual tuner. It will constantly go out of tune, but again, once you've got it in tune, roughly, stretch it again. Boink. And you want to get all of the slack out of these strings before you lock down those locking nuts. Plectrum of some sort. There it is. Looking at this, the way that the tremolo's sitting, I don't think this was 10s before. I think this was 9s, which means I'm going to have to make an adjustment in the back. So bear with me. Yes, I think it was. I think this was. Must have been a different gauge string. That's not this one. That should be that one. Sorry. Picture will be resumed later. Lately, shortly. Latterly. So I have to say those must have been 9s, because frankly that would have sat back in its correct position, which they are certainly not right now. So we are going to need to dial this in to a level position. Get my screwdriver. Ooh, that's a bent screw, Tom. The they're warped. The whatchamacallit, tremolo claw screws are warped. They're going round in very odd bent shapes. Not good. Okay, now we're horizontal. Let's get see if we can see if the tuning will go to where we want it. Look at you, right. Put this in. Let's place this here now. It's leaning back. That's flat. Let's go in. Okie dokie. Do a bit more stretching while we're at it before I do the final let go and tune using the tremolo claw. Get some more stretching out of here. So what I've done is just propped the bridge flat, horizontal, tuning it up, and then what I'll do is the sort of quick way is to then let it go, and it will go sharp as the strings pull. The springs overpower the strings. Do a bit more stretching as well, and then tune it back to equilibrium using the claw screws. So it's usually the low strings that hold on to the slack longest and take most stretching out, so I'll give them a bit more welly. So having said that, all things being equal, this should go back to its original position. If it doesn't, then something's changed, and what's usually changed is the gauge of the string. Bit more stretching, and then we should get close to being done. The more the string is stretched out before you lock it down, the better. So before you lock down, get all your nice going, man. I just fallen off the platform. Hold on, we're level. Right, yeah, get all your micro tuners adjusted back out, and then maybe in I don't know how you could judge it, by sort of a turn or so in, all about the same amount. They very rarely come out, almost always in. Okay, so we could at this point replace our locking nuts. And once we've got our locking nuts locked down, we can release the support on the bridge. It should now pull back in a hurry, and now we should be able to tune our long screwdriver. That G, we want that A, sorry, we want to come down to a G by releasing the tremolo claw screws. And when it gets down to G, it should also be horizontal. That's the nice thing about doing it that way around. G sharp. They are bent, these screws, a bit odd. They're sort of going round and up and down at the same time. There we are, pretty much on the mark. Just up a little bit again, back up to G. Right, so let's just now check what the actual playing action is at the far end. We currently have 1.5 and just slightly high. Thank you. Okay. 1.5. Yeah, are we in a better look? We're a little bit better positioned, but not an absolute ton. One point, yeah, 1.2, 1 point there. Right then, okie dokie, let's just double check things. Let's have a look at the relief. There is about 0.2 mils of relief. Tighten that up. Okay, there we are. That's that. I will take the tremolo off for a minute, put the back on. The only thing that I wish was a fraction better was the action here, but I actually don't think we've got any further room that's available by slacking off and pushing or anything. I don't want to push against an area that already has a slight hairline crack in it. So, and if there's not enough room, you don't want to be pushing hard. Okay, so there we have it. Everything good, action good. Tighten up, polish up, and home. think it's improved the fret slap considerably. I don't know if it's going to be possible to have got rid of all of it. You know, there are some slightly magical things that happen where you get some better. Some guitars won't make it go away completely. Yeah, good. Right, I'm happy with that. Good thing is Tom can have a play and see if that's improved it for him. I think it will have. Like I said, it's not possible, as you can see, to get rid of every last little bit of it at that action. But we've improved it considerably, which is good. Righty-ho. Thank you for watching. Shall get on my way home. I think that's as central as we can be now. It has improved it. It's not as bad as it was in position, but it's as good as it can be. I think I might just do a manual tweak on the back here, just to make sure it's as tight as it needs to be. Yes, 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 and yes. Okay. There we go. So now when you look at the frets, what you don't see is great big flat spots, thankfully, as you did before. How do I feel? Right, I'm just out of interest going to check what that first fret action is, because if it's more than the standard I like, if it's much more than that, we can always go down. It's a fraction over. It probably is telling me that it just wants one sheet. Yeah, it's 0.4, just above 0.4. So we could go down. A sheet. I'll probably do that. I'll do it off camera, but I'll go down a sheet on there and drop it down by a tiny amount, because it goes to show that the 2 pieces is too much, but 1 piece would be enough. So to do that, it'll mean that I need to lock off this. So when it goes and grabs it, sits down on it. Lock that off. Detune these. Anyway, I shall see you later. This will be just a simple matter of stripping that off, putting the next single piece on. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.